Just have a thing coming tomorrow on the Detroit Pistons with James Edwards that I had to watch a lot of Pistons tape yesterday, so that wasn't great. Especially decent amount of end of seasons Pistons tape last year when there was no infrastructure whatsoever. They were playing, Jalen Duren and James Wiseman lineups and James Wiseman and Marvin Bagley line. It was I'm good.
Y'all. Yeah, there were a lot of lineups that happened towards the end of the year for them, and that was interesting. I think my biggest takeaway from the end of the year with them was I think a lot of times when you watch a player do some things towards the end of the year, especially now as I've been in it longer, I have a little bit more of, all right, well, that's cool, but I want to find some more nuance within it. But I think within what the context was, seeing what Jaden Ivey got to do with the ball in his hands, as an actual on-ball creator as the year went on, with what that team was down the stretch was really impressive to me. And I think seeing the stuff you were tweeting out just makes me that much more excited to watch Jaden this next year because he's a special talent.
Yeah, it's interesting just the way that end of season worked out. I'm a big believer in you have your centerpieces on some respect because Cade wasn't there. He wasn't playing at the end of the year, but you have guys that you want to build around long-term, and Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren. You should be playing them in the position that they are best in, right? Yeah. Jaden Ivey, there's still a chance he can be a high-level point guard long-term. I would like to see him continue to get on-ball reps, and he did late in the year. I thought it was really valuable to get him on-ball reps. To his improvement from the beginning of the year toward the end of the year in terms of slowing down, playing at pace, playing with real tempo, playing with real rhythm, I thought was so impressive. He showed real tangible growth in that way. He shot well off the catch last year. He had 37% of his catch and shoot threes. I thought that just that growth from the beginning of the year to the end of the year was wildly impressive. And it wasn't impressive from an effort and energy perspective, which is where I think those guys can kind of really break through at the end of the year when the season's over for some teams, things are getting a little bit ugly and rosters have no continuity and everything. I really liked that his improvements came through the lens of skill and thinking things through as opposed to and processing ability, as opposed to just okay, he's just going to run in and dunk and he's going to try and get in transition and he's going to play transition fests. That was great. The other guy that they care about long-term is Jalen Duren. And the thing that I hate that they were doing was playing Jalen Duren with Marvin Bagley and James Wiseman. They played Jalen Duren 180 minutes or so with Marvin Bagley. They played him with James Wiseman only 60 or so minutes. But in all of those minutes, Jalen Duren is the one guarding the four at the end of the day, because Jalen Duren is more athletic. He's more mobile. He has better footwork. He's just more capable of guarding the four-man than either of those two are. Mm-hmm. He's just more capable of guarding than either of those two are. But I hate the fact that the team, I get it. Some Pistons fans will say they were just experimenting, the end of the season, everything like that. And I think that's a reasonable, rational argument. But to me, if I am experimenting, I want to experiment around the guys that I think are pillars long-term for my organization. And I want to get them as many reps as possible in the things that they really struggle at. And in the case of Jalen needs as many reps as possible defensively. He has all the tools to be a good defender. And I think at some point, he has a very good shot to be a good defender. He is not there yet. And this is a team that wants to try and make a play-in run this year with Jalen Duren as their starting center, right? Mm-hmm. To do that, you kind of needed to get him those 250 minutes of reps last season in the regular season in live game time, just so he starts seeing things, getting him more experience, getting him more time on the court where he's visualizing, okay, this is what it looks like when, for instance, Sam Hauser comes off of a stagger screen off ball and I'm guarding Blake Griffin and I need to show so that Sam Hauser doesn't get like just a wide open lane to the rim. I need to anticipate. I need to see things coming before they happen. He didn't do any of that. Like his anticipation is not there yet because of course it's not there. He's 19 years old, right? Like he is so young, but the Pistons want to try and compete like for a play-in berth this year with him at starting center. So those 250 minutes where he didn't play center and those 50 or so minutes where in summer league where he played next to James Wiseman and didn't play center, those 300 minutes might matter in terms of getting reps and getting development for this season. It won't matter long term. Like he'll get the reps, but like for this season, I think it does matter. And I think that's where my like frustration and disappointment with that kind of stuff comes in.
Yeah, no, I get that for sure. And it'll be really interesting to watch how that plays out, specifically too, because I think I look at it almost more on the offensive side where like I thought there were moments where they really tapped into running some stuff through him. Like not, again, I think you and I have talked about it before, not that I think Jalen Duren needs to have like 25% usage, but to me, the best version of him is somebody who you can do some like elbow playmaking with, or you can get some opportunities to really get creative out of running more DHOs and letting him do a couple things that just make it, for a guy who doesn't track as a potential shooter to get the most out of some of the playmaking and like court vision feel that he's shown at times, as a youth prospect. So I think I want to see more of that. And I think they kind of went away from that as the year went on. Especially when they played more of the double big stuff. But I agree, like regardless, like I'm not trying to shit on him. Like I think he did really good stuff this last year. Just it definitely gave me more questions, with what they were doing towards the end.
Yeah, and again, like these are small potatoes things. Like they're not like, it's not the biggest deal in the world to see what guys can do, let them explore the studio space, do all that stuff. But like I don't know. I think that organizationally and philosophically, I just like fundamentally disagree with that as an idea and as a strategy. And I would just like to see teams in those moments try and play it a little bit more intelligently and like calculatedly, I guess, in terms of trying to get guys developmental minutes in the ways that matter.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, trying to let them expand their skill set or whatever. Okay. That's my Pistons talk. That's a big long rant about the Pistons because oh my god, I had to watch like 4 or 5 games last night of like
just a little
RJ Hampton. Yeah, I watched like probably 10 games last night of like Jalen Duren defensive possessions like through the course of the season, and my god, the end of the season where they had like RJ Hampton out there, and honestly, like. Jaden Ivey has some work to do on that end too.
Yeah, he kind of skated by in terms of criticism on that end last year because of what the rest of
wasn't great.
Would be. Yeah, I think that's his biggest area for growth is definitely on the defensive end because, ooh, buddy, yeah,
that was something. I will say that was absolutely something. Watching
he was on the court when defense happened. That is for sure.
Yeah, definitely true. Someone asked, will Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart work? I think that it has a better chance to work because they both are more mobile than Marvin Bagley and James Wiseman.
They
both, yeah, go ahead.
Here's my thing. So it's funny. I was talking about this the other day because understandably, like some Pistons fans brought up when I was tweeting about PJ Washington, some people were like, would you rather pay PJ what he got paid or Stu what he got paid? And I was like, honestly, like very point blank, it's PJ for me. But that's because I think the world of PJ as a player, like you and I talked about. Like I still think he's kind of underrated in what he can do and what he could be. But I think it's interesting, and I get why a lot of Pistons fans are kind of down on Stu and what he's done so far. But worth noting, dude is still really young. I think he's tangibly added something to his game each year. Like obviously the increase in shooting volume matters. I think getting improvement in accuracy and continuing to bring up that volume matters, and connecting a little bit back to the defense that I think he showed more in his rookie year matters. But this is like I don't think that it was a bad deal for Stewart. Like I think it could be, but I think when you're baking in what his potential could be, like I think it ends up looking fine for the most part. Maybe it doesn't end up.
Be fine.
Yeah, I don't think. Do I think that he ends up playing his entire contract in Detroit? I don't know. I know that they really like him, which otherwise they wouldn't have signed him and kept him. But like, I don't think it was a crazy bad deal, especially too when you look at how all the other deals played out after his contract was signed. I don't have a problem with it. And I like you mentioned too. Like, I think that there is room for, if he continues making strides, if Duren keeps making strides. I don't think it's crazy that we see them play minutes together, and it's like not entirely unfeasible. So
yeah, like Isaiah has a chance to shoot. Isaiah's going to have to shoot for it to work.
yeah.
They both can move their feet at a level that I think is like a little bit underrated. Jalen's probably isn't underrated. Jalen just needs the anticipatory work and needs to like understand where things are coming from, like a little bit higher of a level. Again, teenager, like you would expect that, right? Like I don't want to, Pistons fans don't come at me. He's, young, and it's very understandable why he wasn't good defensively last year. But Isaiah is pretty good defensively and is a little bit more like switchable than what I think he gets credit for.
Yes.
And he is the thing for him is he needs to improve his perimeter game, like his ability to handle, his ability to make decisions, things like that. Honestly, if I was Detroit, and I kind of wrote this in the thing I have coming tomorrow, I would go into the season planning to start Cade, Ivey, Duren, Boyan, and like Alec Burks or something like that. I think people like don't understand how good Alec Burks has been over the course of the last few years. Like for 4 years, he's been like a really good player at this point. And his shooting would be really valuable. I know that Alec really likes to kind of try and create with the ball in his hands and does like to dribble a bit. But I think if you can just like limit that a little bit, especially now that you have Monte coming off the bench who can handle those bench units. Yeah, I think he's been I think it would be really valuable to get as much shooting on the court with Cade as you possibly can so that you can learn where exactly he sits. Cade has had like no shooting on the court with him whatsoever in Detroit at this point. I would really like to see him with lineup situations that are more similar to what we see from like a Luka or someone like that.
Not to derail us too much, but if I ever told you, and this won't surprise you at all, that Alec Burks is like one of my guys that I.
It does not surprise me at all. Yeah, you have not told me that, but it lines up.
It's kind of funny because like one of the craziest things for me, like obviously like I'd watch basketball in the early 2010s, but like going back and like really watching, seeing the like. Because when you watch Alec Burks play, you don't think about athleticism. He's very below the rim. He hasn't dunked in like 4 years. Dude, watching Alec Burks in like 2013, 2014, I'm not saying that he was like Paul George level athlete, but he was a pretty sick athlete. Like
he's a good athlete. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, not to say that he's like a guy who got killed by injuries, but like his career didn't get killed, obviously. But like, when you think about how many games he missed and how many injuries he had subsequently on top of each other, there's a really cool story there with the way that he's been able to work himself into just becoming like a really solid role player, especially with what he did with the Knicks. Like, I think that's kind of gone underrated in terms of what he's done. Like, I know in some ways he got stretched to the max in what he got asked to do in New York, but I don't know. I just really appreciate things like that because he was a guy who was like very much like up in the air. The stint in Cleveland did not go well. It was kind of like, what's going to happen after he was kind of transitioning out of Utah. And so seeing him get to like have that health and be a cool role player, I don't know. I love that stuff. It makes me happy.
No, I do too. I really, truly do. I think it's amazing the way he's worked it in. And yeah, he struggled. Like he had that weird shoulder separation. He had like a long-term kind of ankle injury, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was he had the ankle like multiple times in Utah because he only played like 150 games his first 4 years in the league. Like it was kind of a weird start for him.
It took him a minute to like really establish himself. And I'm with you. I love those stories when guys that like 28 years old, like really figure it out. And then like after Utah, he got traded like 3 or 4 times. And, sometimes it just takes a minute to settle in and become who you can become.